You're going to show me Inquisite, what you built with your co-founder.
That's right. So this is Inquisite. It's an AI-powered platform for research teams in universities and also in industry. And so we use AI, and specifically agentic AI or AI agents, to accelerate workflows for research teams, to help them get their work done faster and typically done better. So this is the homepage of our platform. We've got a suite of what we call assistants, which you can also think about as AI agents. We prefer to call them assistants because they're really designed to augment human research teams, not try to replace the scientists and researchers.
That's kind of key. You're not building this to replace researchers, you're building this to help them.
That's right, yeah. Research is a highly creative task at this point at least, and for the foreseeable future. I don't think that AI will have the type of creativity we need to do really novel research. I think we very much still need human scientists in the loop. But what we really need to do is give human scientists more time and freedom to be creative, to focus on the things that we can do uniquely as humans, and allow AI to kind of supplement with the things that we can offload or outsource to AI.
This saves researchers a lot of time?
It does, yeah. So things like doing literature reviews, for example, searching the research literature, can take hours, days, weeks, sometimes even months, depending on how extensive of a process you want to go through. And we can bring that down from, let's say, days or weeks to a matter of minutes, really. So minutes. We can really speed up that process and help people focus on sort of the core research, being in the lab, doing the actual research work versus doing some of the kind of other necessary tasks that don't actually move the needle in terms of the research.
So if you're saving time, does that mean you get discoveries faster?
We believe so. Yeah, that's our ultimate goal with Inquisite, is to try to speed up the pace of discovery and translation, right? Because there's the discovery component, right? But translation is also a big challenge. So if you look at the life science industry, for example, where we put a lot of our emphasis, it's never been more expensive or taken longer to get a new drug to market. It takes on average over 10 years, takes billions of dollars to do that. And so our ultimate goal with this is to speed up discovery and translation, so we can do things like bring new drugs to market in, let's say 3 to 5 years rather than 10 to 20 years.
Wow. That could be revolutionary.
We hope so. We need it. I think that AI is a fascinating technology, but the really interesting thing about AI is when you apply it to solve real human challenges. Not sort of, can you write me an email quicker, or can you kind of book a meeting on my calendar for me, but can you help assist us in accelerating discovery and bringing new drugs to market and discovering new materials that are more sustainable, new forms of energy, et cetera. That's where I think the really exciting things about AI come in.
Let's see.
All right, so we'll give you a quick demo of the platform. We have 2 assistants currently available on our platform, and then we're building several others. Our first assistant is called the Research Assistant, and this was the original core of the project when we launched it here at Duke and set up the company Inquisite. The Research Assistant is designed to accelerate the process of doing sort of background research. So when you're starting a new research project, you typically will spend a lot of time trying to get up to speed to get to the very cutting edge on whatever field that you're working in. Or if you're doing something like designing a clinical trial for a new drug, or building a regulatory filing or a grant application. All of these tasks involve a component of literature searching. And historically, this was a very manual process. So you'd use something like Google Scholar, which is kind of like the academic equivalent of Google, and you type in a search, and you'd have to kind of try to match keywords, so figure out what are the exact right words I need to get the papers, and then you get a list of, let's say 50 or 100 different papers, and you'd have to kind of scroll the list and try to guess which ones are going to be the most relevant, and then click in, read them, and you might get 3/4 of the way through a paper and realize that's actually not answering the question that I'm trying to address.
So you've wasted a lot of time.
Yeah, wasted is one way to say it. Hopefully you've learned something in the process. But either way, you spend a lot of time that maybe you didn't need to spend on that. So we're trying to make that process much simpler and get you kind of right to the point, right to the most relevant information wherever it exists to answer your question. And so I'll give you a quick tour of that. We have a few different actions that each assistant can take for you. So our research assistant can help you kind of answer highly scientific questions based on the research literature, build a full literature review for you, or even help you keep up on the new literature, keep track of new papers that are published in your field. So let's try a sample question. So we're going to research a topic here, and let's just pick a simple one. So this is a gene that actually relates to Parkinson's, and so we're going to ask what proteins are known to interact with this. It's now going to go through a process here where it's going to review the existing research literature on it, and you can see it over here working. So the first thing it does is it thinks about what you're asking, and it builds a plan for how to address this. So it will take your query, and it will think about what tools do I have available to me to go look for information to answer this question, and then it'll make some decisions around which tools should I use. And so in this case, it's now going to go into our research database, and it's going to search for relevant research papers.
And again, this process used to take days, weeks, even months.
That's right, yeah. So it's decided to search for research papers. It's formulated, in this case, 3 different queries that it's constructed for you. And then it goes and executes those queries in our database. And we can see here it found 119 papers that were potentially relevant using those queries. It then went through a process where it reviewed all of the metadata, the titles, authors, citations, the abstracts of all of those papers, and it filtered those 119 papers down to just 17 papers that it determined were highly relevant to answer my question. So you can imagine how much time this might take if we presented all 119 papers as you would get with like Google Scholar or something.
Sure.
It would take you a long time to sift through all those. So we've done that process for you, and we filtered it down to 17 papers. It then reviews those 17 papers and makes a determination, have I found the information you're looking for or not? In this case, it did, and so it ended there, and it created a synthesis for us of what it learned from those papers. In other cases, it might not have found it on the first try, and if that happens, it'll actually go back to the beginning, and it'll sort of retry a different route. So it'll construct a different set of search queries, go through those, look at what it found, determine did I find the answer or not, and it'll kind of keep going in this sort of a loop until it answers your question.
Wow.
So in this case, we've got sort of a little synthesis of what it's learned from reviewing all those papers. You can see that everything in the synthesis is cited, and we can actually refer back to the exact text pulled from that paper, so we can verify what the AI is telling us. And this is a big difference from things like ChatGPT, for example, where you put in a question, you'll get an answer, but you don't know, can I rely on that answer? Is it factually correct? Or was it just invented or hallucinated, as we say, by the AI? And so we believe in transparent AI that refers back to sources.
This is key because basically there's always a source.
Yes.
This is never just coming out with some summary of the internet.
That's right.
Always directing you directly to some paper on the subject.
That's right. It's always it always refers back to sources. So we say that it's grounded, which means that it's relying on human-created sources of information to create an answer. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So that's a quick look at what a research assistant can do. We can also create literature reviews, and so this works a little bit differently. So if I were to look for evidence on some relationship, for example, the gut-brain axis involvement in anxiety and depression, I might do a full-blown literature review, and it'll go through a similar sort of agentic process where it will conduct a search on my behalf, review all of the papers, down select from what's often hundreds of research papers that it finds, and then it will construct a nice table for me of what it's learned, and it'll go in and it will extract different pieces of information from those papers to answer my question.
So who's using this right now?
Yeah, so we've got researchers using it both in the academic world at a variety of universities, both here at Duke and outside, as well as on the industry side. Biotech startups, larger science-focused companies, et cetera.
Have they told you how much time it's saving them?
They have, yeah. We've heard from them. It can save 80% plus time in doing literature searching, which is quite a bit. So it really frees them up to pursue the more kind of creative, more strategic activities that they need to do.
I think so many people would hear it saves them 80% time and still have the worry that that's someone's job that could potentially be eliminated. How do you respond to that?
Yeah. our belief is that we're not trying to directly replace jobs, but we're trying to augment the people in those jobs so that they can focus more of their time on value-add activities. So for let's say a scientist working at a biotech startup, in the ideal world, you want to be in the lab, doing core research, advancing the state of science, coming up with new discoveries, et cetera. And so if you get pulled away from that by having to spend days or weeks kind of searching through papers, building out a grant application, working on regulatory filings, et cetera, that's taking time away and attention away from your core mission, which is accelerating discovery. So we see it as giving time back to our target users so that they can focus their time on higher value activities.
Okay. Let's show me something else.
Yeah.
I think you were going to, is it going to say with
I
Inquisite?
could show you, I can show you some more in Inquisite, or we could switch over to a second. I could show you kind of an example of how I use AI in terms of coding.
I do want to know how you built it.
Yeah, so this was developed, actually, the origins of this date back to kind of pre-ChatGPT.
Why don't we save, unless you're going to show me something.
Yeah, I'll show you. Let me show you something. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example of how I use AI in my role in building Inquisite. And so this is our code base for Inquisite. Most of it's in Python and a few other languages, but this is actually the code that powers our homepage that we just saw, so this screen right here. And so let's say I want to do something here, like I'm going to do a little styling here. So let's add a banner at the top of the screen in purple that says I heart WRAL with a heart icon. All right. So I've requested from a coding agent what I want to do, and it's going to go through my code. It's going to review this, and it's going to make some adjustments that you can see in the green here. It's actually proposed adjustments to my code to do what I've just asked it to do. So let's accept those adjustments. Like what we saw with Inquisite, the human is always in the loop. So it's not sort of automatically doing this without letting me know. So it's doing something, it's proposing something, it's asking me to confirm it.
The human is always in the loop.
The human is always in the loop.
That's key.
Yes. And that's our belief with Inquisite as well, that the human scientist ultimately has to govern the process and always be in the loop. So I've just accepted it. So let's see if it worked here. There we go. Okay, so now we've got a new homepage. And
Hi,
so it's as simple as that. Yes. So I won't save that, but that gives an example of the power of AI sort of in the coding world. Wow. I mean, if I had to do that manually, maybe it's not that big of a change, but maybe it would have taken me half an hour to kind of get that all set and styled and so on. But now I just did it in under a minute.
Wow. Now, AI is taking jobs from coders.
In some cases, yes, particularly at the more junior level. So the coding capabilities of AI are improving all the time. They are still somewhat limited. You might say it's on the level of sort of a junior software engineer or so. There is active discussion in the field on whether it will sort of fully replace human coders or not. My personal opinion on that is I don't think so, because software engineers do a lot more than just write those lines of code that you just saw. Things like architecting systems, designing systems, thinking through sort of the structure of how I want to organize data that powers the systems, et cetera. And these are kind of like scientists in the lab. These are often highly creative, highly strategic activities and things that are difficult for AI to do.
Okay. All right, let's see the
Great.
other
interesting
things.
Yeah, so we can show you. I can show you kind of one more example. It's interesting to look at. Let me switch over here. Okay, and so this is a product from Google. It's called Google's Deep Research, and so they launched this a few months ago, and it works in a bit of a similar way to our research assistant with Inquisite. Although a key difference is that ours is focused on scientific research. And so we tap into proprietary databases of research. We do things in a highly structured way that aligns with sort of scientific standards for research. Google's deep research is more of a sort of consumer-focused tool or professional-focused tool that can do research using the web. So it can access things that are available on the internet. So we might ask it a question, like, let's try something. I haven't tried this before, but let's see what it comes up with. I'll ask it to build a profile of John Reichneider, the professor at Duke. And let's see what it comes up with. And let's, we're going to show its thinking, as it says here. So one of the neat things about some of the newer models, and like what you saw in Inquisite as well, is that they can actually show sort of what they're doing.
Right.
So it's not just this black box that you ask a question, it goes off and does some work and then comes back with an answer, but it actually kind of shows you its process. Talks about where it's searching, how it's searching, what it's searching for, what it's learned along the way, and then now it's got an answer here. So this sounds pretty good. John Reichneider, pioneering AI education and innovation at Duke University.
Thanks, Gemini.
Yes, thank you. Very complimentary. So this looks pretty accurate to me with a quick glance, but this was done again. It's, you know, if I had just gone to Google and kind of searched that, I probably would have found a bunch of links, and then I'd have to spend, you know, some time kind of going through and, you know, figuring out which ones are relevant, synthesizing what I learned, et cetera. So this just took that task, which maybe would take 20 minutes or so, down to, you know, 30 seconds or so for me. And I can ask it some more complex things as well. So I can ask it to do research on all sorts of different things, build tables, generate reports, et cetera.
Is there AI that's either generative or that worries you, that's accessible right now? That you can show us an example, of something, the way that the speed with which it works, the information it's putting out. Just show me an example of something that's a little concerning that you would show your students.
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me see. Yeah, so one of the things that concerns me is more of a sort of a use case of AI versus maybe a technology innovation, which is that there are certain companies that are using AI to build these sort of AI companions. And there are different sort of perspectives on this. On the one side, there is an argument that they can help with things like folks that have sort of depression or anxiety and give kind of an outlet and something to talk to. But there's also a significant concern around sort of replacement maybe of human friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, et cetera, with sort of AI. There's also a tendency to sort of anthropomorphize these and, you know, make them into sort of a, you know, he or she, and treat them as if they were a human. And I think that is concerning, because at the end of the day, AI is a technology. It's a software program. It's not a human being. I don't really believe in assigning kind of names or genders or other things to AI. And so when I see things like people, you know, spending hours a day talking to an AI companion about their life, that is concerning. I mean, we already hear a lot about the loneliness epidemic we have here in the United States. And I think this has the potential to only make that really, you know, worse as we start to turn to sort of AI companions versus our human, you know, friends and family.
And you're paying for companions.
And you pay for it as well, yes.
How did Inquisite come to be?
Yeah, so just prior to sort of ChatGPT, so maybe 2.5 years or so ago, I'd been working on, just sort of out of interest, a research project to look at how we could use large language models, so sort of the predecessor of ChatGPT, as part of information search. So I've always been interested in sort of how we as humans find information. And I kind of early on recognized the potential that large language models had to really accelerate the process of finding the right information that you need very, very quickly. And so I had been building out some kind of demos and prototypes, et cetera, of using kind of very early large language models to kind of quickly pinpoint very specific information within a large kind of body of text. And there were a lot of different applications for this kind of technology, and I was sort of thinking about what should I do with it. And at that same time, I started doing some research here at Duke. So historically, I am a teaching professor. I run our master's program. But I started up a small applied research lab around AI at that time. And as I myself got into research, I found one of the big challenges I faced was quickly getting up to speed on a new field. When we wanted to launch a new project, I'd have to spend days or weeks kind of going through all of the literature, figuring out what's relevant, reviewing it all, et cetera. And so at that time, I started thinking about how I could apply this little sort of prototype I had built to solve that problem for me and for the students in my lab initially. And that was kind of the origins of what we now call Inquisite, was building this little tool that could accelerate that process for it. And then we worked with Duke eventually to kind of set it up and spin it out from Duke as a, we call a for-benefit or public benefit company, and start to serve research teams outside of the Duke ecosystem on both kind of the university side and the industry side.
So you were trying to solve a problem that you were yourself facing.
Yes.
How did you knew how to build it though? That's the key.
Yes.
So I think, we can directly relate to it. I tell John that, well, I was doing my PhD at University of Arkansas. The part which our research assistant can do now, where you can go synthesize through hundreds of papers, and find out, which is typically called a literature survey, right? It took me like 11 months to go do that. And that potentially I can do it over a weekend now if I had Inquisite at that point of time, right? So there was definitely a motivation of seeing what this can help with, right? And being able to directly relate to the problem and solve that was a big motivating factor for us.
Yeah, I prefer the term agentic AI relative to AI agents, and so whichever one you use, AI agents are basically a system that uses large language models that can do some work on your behalf. And so a typical large language model, you give it a question, it would sort of give you back an answer. And the answer it gives you back is based on what it's learned during its training process of creating that LLM. And it really can't do sort of anything else. It can't interact with the outside world. It can just sort of give you text back in response to you giving it a text prompt or a question. Agentic AI uses these large language models, but puts them together in a system that can go through sort of a process to do work very much like a human would. So suppose you had some task, maybe a research task, and you have an intern, and you'd ask the intern to go research something and come back tomorrow with sort of a report on this topic. That intern obviously wouldn't just start generating text and just start writing the report right away, right? He or she would first hopefully go through sort of a phase of doing some planning. Okay, what are you asking me to do? Let's kind of break that down into some smaller problems. Where should I go research each of these different aspects of it? Where can I find the information I need? But they build a plan first, and then they go and execute that plan, probably using other resources, searching the web, going to academic databases, maybe going to other types of databases of information. They go and execute this searching process, and then they'd pull together everything they learned, they'd review it all, and then they'd synthesize it in some sort of a report. So it would be kind of a multi-step process. And agents are designed in a way that they can kind of mimic the process a human would go through, where they also go through kind of a planning process. So when you give an agent a task, it'll look at what tools that agent has available to access, and it will build a plan. Then it'll go through a second stage of executing the plan. It will then sort of look at what it did, compare it back to what you asked for, and determine, have I kind of met the requirements of what was asked or not? And if so, it will sort of terminate and it will give you back an answer. If not, it actually has the ability to go back to the beginning and build a new plan and try it a different way. Again, very much like a human would. If an intern sort of chooses a path, goes down that path, and then realizes that's actually kind of that's a dead end, this is not going to get me to where I need to go to answer your question, they'll go back to the beginning, build a new plan, and sort of go off in a different direction. Agents are particularly exciting because they can actually sort of do work very much like a human might.
So they're autonomous.
There are different types of agents. Some are sort of fully autonomous, so you sort of give it a goal or a task, and it goes off and it uses the tools or the sort of things it has access to and tries to achieve your goal for you. There are other types of agents, though. So at Inquisite, we believe in what we call human-in-the-loop agents, meaning that the human is sort of in the driver's seat at all times, and so we're giving sort of tasks to the AI, but the AI is constantly coming back, checking in, sort of asking for guidance when it needs it, asking for clarification, asking you to approve what it's doing. So that gives you a sort of a level of control over what the agent's doing.
Is control important?
Very important, right? Especially in the world we live in, and the field we are in, right? In research, trust is very important, right? So as compared to other LLMs where they can pick anything off the web and report that, that can break the trust, right? So we do want to make sure that we go after the trusted source and have that under control, right? That's the reason that we start out, our search begins at the core research that has been published, right? So that control is very important, I think, in our case.
How long did it take for you all to build this?
So as John said, I think that the thought process has been going on for I think I will say about year and a half now. But the core,
8.5 years?
No, 1.5 years.
Oh,
1.5 years. And I think the core technology, that the details were built out over the last like 8 or 9 months, right? And we are constantly updating that. So we, I mean, you saw the research assistant. Now with what's happening in the global economy, with what's happening with the grants for the university, we have built out an equivalent of called grants assistant, right? So that which help researchers to find the right grants, help them apply for it, right? So we are looking at the core things that a researcher does that can be made a lot more streamlined, right, and efficient using AI, right? So we started with the core research assistant. Now we have grants assistant, and we'll continue to go build more assistants like that.
So it evolves with the reality on the ground.
Exactly right. Exactly right. In fact, I mean, the grants assistant was something which we saw a few months ago with what things happening with the federal government and a lot of universities and struggling with. So we took that as an opportunity to go build something out very quickly.
And just quickly on the business side of this, I mean, how are you selling it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So as I mentioned, we are structured as we call it public benefit company, which means that we both serve kind of a clear societal mission, but we're also required to be financially sustainable, meaning we have to make some money to cover the cost of what we do. So we partner with both universities as well as industry, companies in industry. We sell it as sort of a subscription service. And so as Pramod mentioned, we now have kind of 2 assistants, our research assistant, our grants assistant. We're in the process of building 2 additional ones. And we allow research teams to pick what they need. So if they're applying the grants, they might find value in the grants assistant. If they're about to conduct clinical trials, they may find value in our new clinical research assistant that we're building. And so they can pick and choose what they need, and they pay on a monthly basis for usage of it.
Has it been successful? Are you selling well at universities?
We are. Yeah, we are. We've gotten a lot of interest so far on both the university side and the industry side.
Can you say like how many universities are using it at this point?
I could say in terms of, that's a good question on how many universities. We have a little over 1,000 users. I don't know how many different kind of unique universities that represent.
But more than 1,000 users. Yeah. Is it profitable?
We are kind of more or less, I'd say, break even at this point in terms of covering our costs. We operate as a very lean team, so we are maybe the opposite of a Silicon Valley startup, where our model is not to go raise a bunch of venture capital and or take on a bunch of debt or whatever and hire a massive team with the idea that we're going to go sell this for $1 billion later on. We are self-funding it ourselves. We keep our team very lean, very small kind of core team, which also means we can keep our costs low. And so we try to charge a fair price that allows us to cover the cost for running it.
And why don't you want to sell it for $1 billion?
That's a good question. I think Pramod and I have both been very fortunate in our careers so far in industry. We've done very well in industry. We're happy with where we are. We love what we do here at Duke and the impact we're able to make. And so when we started this kind of down this road, we're very clear that our number one goal is let's create something that's impactful. We want to sort of build something that can leave our legacy in the world, that can have a positive impact, that can accelerate the pace of scientific discovery, and that's goal number one. Not necessarily to make a lot of money doing it.
Did you want to answer that as well?
Yes, I think, we're not saying we don't want to go make a lot of money, right? But we have to make sure, we have to make sure that the priorities are very clear, right? And priorities is to make an impact, a meaningful impact, right? On a field, something we are very passionate about, right? As we are going through that, we both come from industry, we understand the dynamics of it, and we want to go build out a business, which prioritizing the mission, right, will also make money, right? And we'll definitely be on that path. Right?
Do you have an expectation that there will be some big discovery that can come from Agentic AI with Inquisite?
Absolutely, we think so. We believe that AI is not sort of sufficient to make discoveries on its own, but we combine sort of the human ingenuity, the human creativity with AI. We have the ability to make new discoveries. Humans and AI have very kind of complementary strengths to us, and so I think when you team human researchers and AI together, it opens up some really exciting possibilities to make new discoveries.
And plus, I think not only new discoveries, we can make the existing processes a lot better. Like as John said, potentially the drug discovery process we can shrink by a third. Another one we're thinking about, and with the efficiencies, a typical PhD in a sciences space or engineering space takes 5 to 6 years, right? And with a lot of help from Inquisite, we think we can shrink that time by 20% or so, right? So these are very fundamental changes that we can slowly bring in, right? That we haven't yet widely advertised or thought about yet.
You both want to have an impact on the next generation of workers in AI. Why for both of you?
Let me answer. Yeah, so in some sense, after I graduated, all of my career was in the space which now broadly called AI. The terminology was very different. It started out, calling data mining, then analytics and advanced analytics and big data. But I have seen, what difference can it make, right? And sometimes, some algorithm in the right setting could help Walmart, generate billions of dollars of incremental revenue, optimize their stores. Same thing at HP, what I've seen the impact that the science brought in, right? Which was typically not how big companies ran, right? I've seen that firsthand throughout my career in even a small company like Yodlee, the last company, where they had all the engineering, but this idea of taking data, enriching that, and getting value out of it. So I believe that we have done this for the commercial companies, right? But taking the same similar technologies and making it useful for researchers, is lot bigger giving back that we can do that, right? And that's something that really excites us and motivates us, right? Yeah.
So I want to get to the bigger questions about AI, but also I know you talk about this every day with your students. This is big for me. This is something that you are talking about all the time, and I'm sure concerned with as well. So in addition to being an entrepreneur, you're also a professor, and that's a choice. You want to have an impact on the next generation of AI thinkers, people who work in AI. What is it that you want your students to know about AI? Every student.
Great question. I think the number one thing we want them to know is to understand what AI is capable of, what it can do, so that they can go figure out what types of problems can I go solve using this technology. One of the really exciting and unique things about our graduate program is that we bring in students from a variety of different backgrounds with all different types of interests. So we have folks that go into healthcare after they graduate, go into finance, energy, education, etc. And we want them to bring with them a set of skills and knowledge in AI so that they can figure out how can I go solve problems in my field using AI. Not necessarily how can I go make the next big social media app or kind of make email a little more efficient or something like that, but how can I go invent new forms of materials? How can I go build new sustainable energy systems? How can I go improve sort of the quality of public education, et cetera, and use AI to help do all those things. So I think that's number one. Number two is a very clear understanding of the limits and risks of AI, which is also important in knowing where it should be used and should not be used.
What are the biggest risks as you see right now?
Yeah, number one, it's important to remember AI is not perfect and likely never will be perfect. Models inherently are not perfect, and so it's important to remember that and think very carefully about where it makes sense to use AI and where not. One of the things we spend a lot of time on in our program is understanding what is the cost of being wrong. So if I'm going to use AI in some situation to help automate some process or make some decision, what happens if it goes wrong? If that's not a big deal, then maybe that's a decent place to think about using AI. If that's a really big deal, then that might not be the right place to use AI, or at least to be very careful about sort of how you're using AI so that you have a human in the loop, human oversight in what the AI is doing.
You know, you gave this excellent answer, and I'm going to try to recreate the question because I think, you know, young people, they understand that AI is around us, that it's going to be something that they are going to have to utilize one way or another, either in school or in some part of their life. But I wonder what is the most important skill for young people to have right now? Should they all be trying to code, or is there something else that they need to be honing?
Yeah, I think the number one skill is critical thinking, understanding, kind of thinking very critically about the state of the world, how it can be improved. One of the things about AI that's important to keep in mind is that it is really a tool to be used by humans. And it still relies on humans, us, to guide it in the right direction, to give it the right prompts, to ask the right questions, to give it the right instructions. And that requires sort of a skill set in the ability to kind of analyze the world around me, identify opportunities for improvement, things that could be fixed, could be better about the world, and then to figure out how can I apply the tools and the skills at my disposal to go and solve those problems. And one of those tools is AI. So that's something that is very hard to teach in the classroom. We try our best in our graduate program to do that, but we really believe in giving people sort of real experience in identifying problems, thinking through how to solve those problems, and then using AI as a tool as part of the solution to it.
You all obviously created your own model. How else are we seeing agentic AI? Well, like for the average person, where are they seeing those tools now in their everyday lives?
Yeah, so they're starting to show up more and more every week. Right now, there's kind of two main places. One is sort of personal productivity. So for folks that are users of things like Gmail, for example, I think just last week you start to see Google's AI show up in Gmail, in Google Search, Google Calendar, etc. Enhancing very kind of minor, repetitive everyday tasks, just making them a little bit more efficient and productive. The second big area, we see AI showing up in everyday life is around research. So if you're going to research really anything, you're shopping and you want to kind of compare products, you want to sort of research a school for your child to go to, you want to research a question at work, etc. We see more and more of these sort of deep research, AI-based tools show up.
So where? Like, give me an example.
So Google has one now called Google Deep Research. I think OpenAI has one of the same name. I think OpenAI Deep Research. Perplexity, would be another one.
All of those are AI agents.
These are all agentic in nature. Yes.
These are agentic. So, and then what's the difference between generative AI? Because I think people would think when they're thinking OpenAI, they think ChatGPT. Are these two different products?
Yes, two slightly kind of variants of ChatGPT. So the original ChatGPT was kind of a standalone large language model, generative AI. You ask a question, it gives you a reply. Again, the reply that comes back is based on the training of the model. So it doesn't go do any searching or execute any sort of actions. It just starts spitting out text in reply to what you've asked it. That's generative AI. Where sort of agentic AI or AI agents come in are when the model now starts taking some action in response to what you've asked it to do. So you may have seen in recent versions of ChatGPT, for some questions that you ask, ChatGPT, well, I should go and execute a web search. Not always, but sometimes. So it'll make a decision, do I need to go search the web to answer your question or not? And if it does, it'll go and execute that action, synthesize what it's learned, and then give you back a response. So that would be more of a form of agentic AI.
So again, put AI into context. If we get AI right, ethics, thinking about humanity, thinking about society, what problems can it solve? But also, what could happen if we get it wrong?
Yeah, great question. I think it's hard to overstate the impact that AI will have on the world. I think it has tremendous potential to accelerate scientific discovery, assist in healthcare, education, really every aspect of our lives. I think it will touch every aspect of our lives, and we're already starting to see that. That also comes with a lot of risk, right? If we get it wrong, if we have bias in our models, if we allow AI to do unsafe things, if we have AI models that are getting it wrong and that's causing major consequences, financial, emotional, or otherwise. I think there's also a lot of danger there as we integrate AI more and more into our lives and start to rely much more on it.
Where do you think it fits then with technology? I mean, are we entering a new era?
Absolutely, and I think we've already started down that path very quickly. Really, sort of, with the launch of ChatGPT, I think we're in a new world where everybody is going to be using AI, in their jobs, in their personal lives, etc.
Do you think people are prepared for that?
No. No, I don't. I think that we still have a lot of work to do in terms of educating around what AI is, how it works, how you should use it, how you shouldn't use it, what are the risks. I think for most people, AI is kind of a mysterious black box that can do somewhat magical things. And I think that's very risky to think that way because you don't develop an appreciation of when you should use it and when you shouldn't use it. And so I think it's really important to understand, at least at a very high level, what's happening in that black box, behind the scenes, what's going on. Because when you have that appreciation, it can really help kind of guide you in terms of where should I use this as a tool, and probably more importantly, where should I not be using it.
I know Wake County Schools is working on a policy to have some type of regulation, some type of policy around AI, and also training around AI for students. How critical is that?
It's absolutely critical. I think in multiple ways. Number one, our children, the students going through schools today, they're going to grow up in a world where AI is really ubiquitous. It's everywhere around them. They're going to be expected to be AI capable, to be using it. And so it's important we prepare them for that future. But on the other side, it's also important that we help them understand, again, what are the risks of using AI? When should you use it? When should you maybe not use it? So in the context of education or the learning process, there's some great benefits of AI. I use AI, ChatGPT, Claude, etc., all the time, every day for my own learning, and I find it to be a great learning tool when I have questions. But it also has the potential to short-circuit the learning process if we become too reliant on these tools. If we outsource our own critical thinking and our own learning to AI, I think that's really dangerous because we never have the opportunity to develop those skills. I think there are some things we can do in terms of policies and regulation. I do think that we should largely kind of keep smartphones out of schools. I think we should be very selective about when we have AI use going on in schools. But I do think it does have a role because, like as I said earlier, it's also important to teach the students how to use these tools correctly. And so I think that really starts with teacher education on AI and working together to define what the role of AI is relative to the role of the individual student or learner. I think, again, in our sort of fast-paced world today, it's so tempting to just, you get a homework question, just hand it right off to ChatGPT to write an essay for you or something like that. But that doesn't really accomplish the goals of learning. And so I think teachers have a really difficult job to do. I think we need to rethink the way we run our education, what we do in the classroom, what we expect students to do outside of the classroom, and we need to structure that in a way that is really targeted at building those critical thinking capabilities, but then allowing the use of AI as a tool.
Let's talk about artificial general intelligence. Why are experts so worried about this? What does it do?
I actually have a bit of a different opinion on this than most sort of folks in the AI community, which is that I don't find artificial general intelligence or AGI all that interesting. I think it's a bit of semantics because we can't sort of form a consensus around what exactly that means and how we would go about measuring it. And so, I think the discussion is a bit of a waste of time. I think the reality is that in different fields, AI will progress at sort of different paces. There are some areas today, things like protein folding, for example, where we have what we call superhuman, super intelligent AI, where we've exceeded the capabilities of humans using AI. So we're already ahead in certain areas. And in other areas, we're quite a bit behind. And so I think what we'll find is, depending on sort of the task in the field, AI might be ahead, AI might be behind, it might be equivalent, et cetera. So to me, that's much more interesting to look at where are the specific fields where we want AI to be ahead, where we can use AI as a tool and we can make more progress as humans if we can rely on a kind of super intelligent AI. And I find that discussion a lot more interesting than trying to talk sort of at a very broad level around the general intelligence that is sort of equal or not equal to humans.
Is there any AI then that scares you right now?
I wouldn't say that the AI itself scares me. I think it's the sort of the people using it and the possible use cases of it that might scare me.
Talk about that.
I think there are certainly opportunities to use AI for things like disinformation campaigns is a great example, and we see a lot of that in the world today, deepfakes, et cetera. I think there are terrible use cases which are enabled by AI, and in some ways we've made it way too easy to allow people to do things like that.
So what's the solution to that?
I don't think there's any single silver bullet solution. I think it's going to be a combination of things. I think that government regulation and policy has a role, particularly around very targeted use cases of it, deepfakes, disinformation, et cetera. I think that's important. I think there's an obligation on the companies that are, and organizations that are building the models to be very clear about how they've built them, what they're intended for, what the risks are, et cetera. Putting guardrails in place to try to minimize some of those harmful uses. And then I think there's also an education component, again, educating people around sort of what we should be and shouldn't be doing with AI.
So there's so many times when we see federal lawmakers, state lawmakers, when they're asked about AI or they're having conversations with the CEOs of these major tech companies, they just do not seem like they understand how the technology works. Do you think our government is capable of regulating AI to protect us?
I think we absolutely are, but I think it does take some education. I think it's hard to try to build policy or regulation around something that you don't fully understand. And so I think step one is really making sure that there's a common understanding, and also that you're bringing in the right people from the community that kind of contribute expertise in different areas to assist with it.
A lot of folks in this area are concerned that AI is going to take their jobs. What role do you see AI playing in the labor market in the future and now?
I think it will play a huge role. I think there are some jobs that will go away because of it. I think it's important to be honest and clear about that. But I think there are many more jobs that will be changed because of it, but not necessarily fully displaced. So, we talked earlier about Inquisite and what we're doing to augment or assist research teams. Our goal is to make them more productive, to accelerate discovery, accelerate translation, not to try to fully outsource or replace them. And I think that is generally true across kind of a much wider,
cross-section of jobs in industry. They will change. People will get more productive. We will change the things that we do, the way we do them. Hopefully for the better. We'll be able to spend more of our time on the higher level tasks, the more strategic tasks, the tasks that require our own uniquely human creativity and critical thinking, and less time on sort of more kind of rote or repetitive tasks or things that we don't like to do. So I think every job in the world will change in some way because of AI, but I think that there are some of the fears around kind of mass displacement of human workers, I think, are maybe a bit overblown.
Final question for you. Meta's CEO kind of cavalierly said that humans, children, like to have friends and they like relationships, and AI can serve as friends for children, and they can have more friends because the AI knows them. They might know their history, their search history. It might know them better than a human does. Are you concerned about children? Are you concerned about children replacing human connection, human interaction with AI?
Absolutely. AI is not your friend. AI does not care about you. AI does not think one way or the other about you. AI is a tool to be used for certain purposes, and I think I think that again comes back to education, really understanding what these things are. These are not humans. They don't have their own sort of human qualities. I think sometimes as adults we can forget that. That can be easy to sort of forget or ignore. I think it's much easier for that to happen with children, and so I think we have an obligation as parents, as adults, to educate our children and work with our children to really understand what are the dangers of that. What is AI really? Again, it's not your friend. It's a useful tool to use in certain things. I have two sons. I occasionally use AI with them for certain things. Like one of our favorite activities is I ask one of my sons to kind of think of some scene or some kind of daydream he has, and then we create an image out of it, and so we get to enjoy these really nice AI generated images. So I think there's a role for AI in certain ways with children, but it's not being a companion or a friend.
The concept of AI becoming aware. Do you think we're on the brink of that, or is that something far down the line? But is that something we should worry about?
No, I don't think that AI can become sentient or conscious or sort of self-aware. Just understanding sort of how AI works. At the end of the day, it's computers and math. But that being said, AI can become very, very capable at sort of mimicking consciousness or sentience, to the point where it becomes hard to tell the difference. If you can fake something so well, the question is then how do you differentiate between that and what's real? So I think that's where the challenge is, that it's able to fake it so well that it becomes almost indistinguishable from real sentience and consciousness.
That's really scary for a lot of people.
It is, yeah. It is scary, and I think that's the path that we're headed down, and so I think, again, obviously I'm biased as an educator, but I think all of it ultimately comes back to education, having a really clear understanding of what AI is and how it works. I think will help people to kind of overcome that in their minds, that even though this thing may be acting like a person, may look like and act like it has emotions and feelings and is self-aware, it's mimicking, it's faking, it's not real, because I understand what it's doing behind the scenes, how it works, and I know that it's not it's not emotional or human-like.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's probably a pattern of human history, that you give sort of technology tools, and good people have access to them and bad people have access to them, and you hope that more of the good people and less of the bad people. And there are certain things we can do on policy, regulation, education, etc., to try to help with that. But at the end of the day, there I think will always be bad actors, unfortunately, with any technology or tool that's available that will try to do bad things. And I'm a very optimistic person in terms of human nature. I like to think positively, and I firmly believe there's a lot more good people out there than bad people in the world.
I think it's key, though, that what you're telling us, and I think people need to be aware of this, that we are entering a new era. We are entering the era of AI, the same way we entered an era of electricity. That's how big this moment is, right?
It is, yeah. I think it's the most exciting, technology event that's happened in our generation, maybe multiple generations. It changes everything, and I think we've only started to scratch the surface now of what it will change. Again, being an optimist, I can't wait to see 5-10 years from now what the world looks like. I think that it will look a whole lot better because of AI.
I hope so.
So do I.
I'm an optimist too, but I hope so. Thank you so much.
Sure.